Greetings and welcome back to Doctor Who Revisited, my ongoing series where I go through every single Doctor Who episode, start to finish from 1963 all the way to 2022, and reviewing them. And this is a pretty big one, the Daleks' invasion of Earth. Once again, we have a regular sci-fi-ish adventure in the first serial of a season, and then in season 2 we go right down to the Daleks, and it kind of has a similar structure in a way to the first Daleks serial from the previous season, where you don't actually get to see the Daleks until right at the very end of the first episode in the serial, which is a cliffhanger. And then the Daleks really show up and start wreaking havoc, I should say, all throughout the other 6 parts of the serial. First of all, how they set up this dystopian future world of planet Earth. First of all, it's very easily recognizable as London, so that automatically gives you the sense of dread, the sense of reality that this is London in the far future when everything went to hell. Essentially, I think it's 200 years in the future because 2164 is around, it's around 200 years. So this is where things could go, and you don't necessarily know what happened. Maybe it was a global plague, maybe it was a world war, could have been several different things. And then obviously by the end of the first serial, it's revealed that, surprise, surprise, it's the Daleks. What else did you expect? And first of all, the iconography of just seeing Daleks in these iconic London landmarks, like Daleks in Trafalgar Square, Westminster Bridge, Daleks in Big Ben, like Daleks rolling around the streets of London. What a sight that must have been to people who watched the episode when it aired originally, and more to the point, what did it must have looked like or felt like for the people who were actually living there while they were filming it in the streets of London, because they did actually film this thing outside on the streets. How did seeing real actual Daleks rolling around London streets during filming, what did that felt like to people? Now obviously this doesn't really have much to do with the episode itself, but the story in and of itself, obviously it's a story that's been retold at least on one more occasion. The Dalek Invasion Earth 2150, the second Peter Cushing movie. Honestly, and this is something that I'm going to stick by, I am not a really big fan of those Peter Cushing movies. I apologize. I'm sorry. They don't really do it for me. I just much prefer the original episodes that those movies are based on, that they adapted it from. In particular, this one, the second one. Obviously, no surprise there, the Daleks were primarily based on Nazis. Like, that's pretty much a given at this point. We all know that. And how they made this episode feel like a Holocaust-type setting, a Holocaust-type storyline, with the Daleks being the Nazis and the humans being, for lack of a better word, the Jews in the camps, or partisans, or citizens of the occupied territories fighting back against the Nazi terror, the Nazi menace. The episode really does make you feel in those Holocaust-type settings, in those World War II type settings, in a futuristic sci-fi dystopian future type environment, and I really liked that. I loved that this episode was able to convey that. So first of all, no surprise there. The 2 parties of the Doctor and Companions get separated. You get Susan and Barbara on one side, and then Ian and the Doctor on the other. And I loved how they integrated the Robomen into this storyline, and I love how we got so much lore of the Robomen in this episode alone. Obviously, the Robomen have been used quite often whenever the Big Finish people decided to go back to this particular time period in Doctor Who, and we've got so much other lore about the Robomen from those Big Finish stories, but there's so much lore about these Robomen in this story alone. That's, again, another great thing that Terry Nation does so well, is he's able to cram so much world building and lore and mythology into, relatively speaking, a short amount of time. There's the guy that gets turned into a Roboman. There used to be a friend to the Doctor and Ian, who then turns on them and he doesn't recognize who they were. There's that one guy who's searching for his brother I really love. There's so many different characters in this story that I could just spend all day analyzing each and every one of them. But there's the Dortmund guy. There's David Campbell. There's several other people, and you see how so many people take to this Dalek occupation in a different way. There's the one guy who's a black market dealer who gives food to the people in the mines who are working there for for a price. Obviously, there's the guy who's the head of the people in the mines who isn't going to just force Ian and the other guy that I can't remember his name at the moment to go back to the mine. Tells them if you got here on your own, you should turn back and leave because if the Daleks see you, you're toast. Can't remember if that's exactly what he said. But yeah, like I said, the mines very reminiscent of labor camps. Again, more hints towards the World War II aspect of it. There's the two women who are sewing things that we just sell out. Barbara and that other woman to the Daleks for food. So many people just take to this Dalek occupation in such a different way. It's not monotone. It's not a one-dimensional Nazi story. The Daleks really do a lot in this episode, and I love how they integrated the fact that Daleks can now go on every type of terrain other than just metallic surface. That was really well handled. I love the Black Dalek, the introduction of a Dalek hierarchy of sorts, and that the Daleks really just, they're not, their sole intention isn't just to conquer Earth. The conquest of Earth is just a small part in the grand design that the Dalek High Command have in store for the planet. Slither was okay. I mean, we didn't really get to see much of it. It looked pretty terrifying when you see it, but it very quickly becomes the familiar guy in a rubber suit. So, and I love that again the sense of fear and dread when Ian was locked up in that shaft with the bomb that was about to explode. There are just so many threats. And again, I said this when I reviewed the first Dalek story. There's just the sense of everything that can go wrong goes wrong. And I think I called it the Back to the Future effect, where one thing goes wrong, they fix it, then another thing ends up going wrong, and they fix that one, and then another thing goes wrong again, and it's just a never-ending cycle of accidents going wrong for the protagonist to deal with before the other thing also goes wrong. And I think they really did a wonderful job with, conveying that in all 7 parts of this serial. There's an iconic moment when Dortmund, I believe his name is, the guy in the wheelchair, literally stands up to the Dalek tyranny using his bombs. Obviously his bombs fail, but just the idea, because for those of you who don't know, one of the other major targets that the Nazis targeted during World War II, who also suffered really greatly during the Holocaust, were disabled and crippled people. So the idea of a guy, literally a cripple, a guy in a wheelchair, standing up to the oppression and the Nazi type regime of the Daleks in a war type setting is just so inspiring. And there's just so much good stuff about this episode. I can literally just sit here and analyze each and every individual part of the episode, and it would just take me 7 parts, 7 different reviews to just talk about this one serial. But I gotta wrap it up, and the only way I can wrap it up is by talking about the final scene, Susan's departure. I have said on this very review show that I am not a fan of Susan necessarily. She really just hurt my ears a lot of the time, and I think even Caroline Ford will agree that the main job that Susan had was to get captured and scream a lot and cry a lot, and she didn't really like that. I think she said that in interviews that she didn't really appreciate that. That was really the only major thing about her character. She was the girl that kept getting captured or kidnapped or whatever. And she doesn't really do a lot of that in this episode, thankfully. But the moment when the Doctor locks her outside the TARDIS, and he gives that magnificent speech, the wonderful First Doctor speech of one day I shall come back Yes, I shall come back. Until then, there must be no regrets, no tears, no anxieties. Just go forward in all your beliefs and prove to me that I am not mistaken in mine. That scene is just, it brings me the tears every time. Even though, like I said, I'm not a big fan of the character, that moment is one of the most beautiful, heartbreaking moments in Doctor Who, of the Doctor realizing that his granddaughter has now outgrown him. And obviously, other Doctor Who stories have hinted at the idea that the Doctor became aware that eventually the Time Lords will catch up to them, and he can't continue to run away forever. And he knew what the Time Lords would do to him once they captured him, so he wanted to find a nice, safe place for Susan so that she would be safe once the Time Lords show up. And this is really the one place he found for her, which was not, again, not really the best places to end up in, but she did fell in love with this guy David, and David was very adamant about not leaving because this is his home, this is where he was going to stay, and she wanted to stay with him, but she couldn't leave her grandfather, so her grandfather basically made her choice for her. And sometimes being a parent is about knowing when to let go and when it's time for your offsprings to leave the nest in a way. And that's basically what the Doctor did. It's hard on both sides. The Doctor doesn't want to give up on Susan, and Susan doesn't want to give up on the Doctor. But eventually, it's about, again, parenting is all about putting your children's needs ahead of yours, and putting them first, thinking of them first, and realizing that Susan would have been much happier if she stuck around with David as opposed to staying with him in the TARDIS. And like I said, it's a really sad scene, very sad moment. It brings me to tears every time I watch it. And the end scene when she's feeling the empty air where the TARDIS used to be, realizing that that's it, her grandfather's gone, he's not coming back, and she just leaves the TARDIS key behind. Pretty stupid thing to do if you ask me, but just to leave this key to a space time machine lying around the dirt. But then again, who's gonna come looking for it anyway? But yeah, it was a really beautiful moment, wonderful scene, beautifully acted by both William Hartnell and Carol Ann Ford, and it's just a sweet, sweet cherry on top on this massive multi-7-layer cake of a Doctor Who serial that is the Daleks' invasion of Earth. One of the best Dalek stories ever told, and one of the best Doctor Who stories ever put to screen. In an effort not to bring the mood down too much, we still got plenty more episodes to talk about, and Susan's replacement is right around the corner. So let's talk. So let's just wrap up today's review and get cracking on some more reviews, because I'm really enjoying this series and I'm really enjoying reviewing all these episodes and talking about them. So I'll see you all in the next one, The Rescue. Goodbye for now. Hi there. Thank you for watching the video. And if you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and tell your friends. I'll see you next time.